All right, Max Grossman here with the El Paso Taxpayer Revolt, and we are honored to have as our guest today Mr. Ted Houghton, native El Pasoan. And before we begin, I'll let Ted introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his experience.
I am from El Paso, and thank you for coming downtown.
Thank you.
Max, appreciate it. Born and raised here. My family, my dad was born and raised here, mother born and raised here, grandfather, I go back a few generations. So, and my experience, I've been on a few boards, both statewide and locally. We can get into those later as we like, but still very interested in on the direction of our community, and hopefully, you know, we try to grow this pie for others in the generations to come. And how would you say, we want to be that, I would say, shining star and people can point to.
Right, and you have a lot of experience in infrastructure, transportation, electricity, water. You've served on key boards, you've served at the state level. There are very few people who know as much as you do about infrastructure and economic development. Fair to say?
Fair.
Okay. So we're going to talk about a number of things. Ted and I might have a difference in philosophy, but maybe we actually agree more than we realize. As a taxpayer, Ted, I'm very worried about taxation. I have to come up with 3% of the value of my home every year. The city has embarked on a path of fiscal restraint with the latest administration. No new revenue tax rate for this fiscal year. No bonds for an entire year. They're going to go for no new revenue in 2025 as well. Very different from the Tommy Gonzalez years. The county is going to issue about $500 million in bonds, including $150 million in COs. There's talk of a UMC hospital on the east side, another $500 million. EPISD, which is my school district, another $500 million. And the city has made very clear, the CFO, that even though they're not going to spend right now, they have to issue about $600 million in bonds over the next 4 fiscal years to meet their obligations to the taxpayers and because of the bond elections, public safety bond and Props A and B. So we're talking about more than $2 billion in bonds that could potentially be coming through the pipeline. As a taxpayer, I'm terrified because 3% is also very high, even compared to other major Texas cities, even compared to other American cities. Our population is declining. Okay, the city population has lost about 6,000 residents net since 2017. We're now at about 677,000. Some, like myself, feel that may be, at least in part, due to high taxation. And, you know, I hope I'm not incorrect, but I understand that you're from the camp. We really need to invest. We really need to bond. We need to develop large capital improvement projects and more infrastructure to get residents to stay here, to stem the brain drain, and to create conditions for a bright future. Where is that middle ground? How much debt should we issue? How much should I as a taxpayer be afraid about my tax rate going forward with all this bonding and maybe with your priorities?
Well, you know, when you talk about how much debt, that's I look at it differently. I say, what do the people want? More that way. I mean, you're hearing about the county and $500 million over there, but I have yet to understand what they want, what the citizens want. So that $500 million, you're saying, okay, what is it? So I go back to the city, and I think you got to go back a little further, Max. I think you got to look at administrations in the past. You've been here 14 years, so you lived a couple of these, maybe 1 or 2 of the administrations where we did nothing. I mean, nothing. We didn't build any. There was no initiative to do anything. And I think we went from a standpoint of competing with other communities to bringing forth ideas and ways to make ourselves look good, you know, dress us up for the big dance. And the dance is competition. Competition, you know, for jobs, economic opportunity, trying to, you know, your brain drain issue that you're talking about. But I look back and I look at several administrations that did zip. All they did was stem the tide, which now based upon what you just said, is what the city's going to do nothing. And I think then you go deeper in that hole. I think it's a bad deal not to be able to invest in yourself. I think, there's a safety net that we have for the underprivileged or the people that are of meager means, let's put it that way, meager means. But at the same time, you got to invest. You got to invest in things that will attract and retain industry to our community and attract and retain people. It's a people thing. You got to El Paso. Now UTEP, and I got to applaud Shaduri, Dr. Shaduri up there on a one-man wrecking machine. He has done some marvelous things with the aerospace and has gotten the attention of the big aerospace industry to the tune, and the United States federal government on grants, to focus on that sector. So I think there's kind of a sector that you have to look at, but going back to the original, how much? I think you have to have, and I don't mean to indict anybody, but there's got to be some visionaries in the public sector. That means the elected class that can paint a vision of this community on what they think and where we need to go. I don't see that right now. There's not any visionaries, or their vision, or when you look at it, is maybe they're not shooting very high. It may be quite low. And I'll give you the most prime example. Today's prime example is the anticipated or proposed what do they call, amphitheater, that is on either side 2 Class 1 railroads and a U.S. highway.
You're talking about the NPC.
Well, that's not an NPC. That's not a multi-purpose center. That's an amphitheater.
The one that the city's going to build.
They are proposing
2012 quality of life bond funds, $180 million.
Between 2 Class 1 railroads and a U.S. highway.
Yes.
Now that's a great place for it. I mean, you're going, really? But the point is, I got to thinking, we didn't vote for an amphitheater, number one. Number two, we have the greatest setting for an amphitheater right now. It's called McKelligan Canyon. It's got probably a world-class setting with them set in the mountain, with the mountain as a backdrop, and most people in El Paso, or a lot, have been there. And when you go there, it is a wow factor. When you're
Beautiful place.
Beautiful place. And now you're going to propose another amphitheater between 2 Class 1 railroads and a U.S. highway. Very traveled, highly traveled U.S. highway.
Okay.
But so, no, I'm just equating vision. That is not the vision that I think we need to be looking at. And let me go back to the lack of investment. Our civic center is too small for big conventions.
Agreed.
We had the opposite before. We had an adequate civic center and we had no hotels. The Paso Del Norte was pretty much in the dumpster. The plaza was closed at the time. You didn't have the Marriott Garden up on Santa Fe Street in the interstate. You didn't have that. Now, we've added hotel space, and with another one I think will come online at some point in time. Mr. Shearer, I think, is going to develop that one, is the old Texas Tower, which will be a Hyatt. So now you got 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, of course, then you have the Aloft that has come on board. You've got the Stanton House as a boutique hotel that's come on board. You got the hotel space, but now you don't have the Civic Center. You don't have the size that you need. My thought has always been, I thought, and I remember at some point in time, that a multi-purpose center would complement the Civic Center. Needed to bring in larger conventions as well as sports events, concerts, etc., etc., etc. But it would complement the Civic Center that is greatly in need of some type of upgrade or enlargement. Now let me go again on something else. You got on the corner an Abraham Chavez Theater that no one uses. They use the Plaza Theater. So we got 2 theaters You only need really one. And you got that. So when I talk about vision, is we got to have some people around the table that the politicians will respect and listen to and say, what does this community need? What do they want before you say, okay, I got $500 million over here. No one knows what the county's looking at. Or it's rumored they're looking at some things. I heard they're looking at an amphitheater at a Scaredy Park.
They produced a list of 100 projects they want to bond, totaling over $800 million, and they have to narrow down to $500 million. It includes trails that cost $3 to $5 million each. There's all kinds of stuff there that doesn't seem fairly essential. But let's move into capital projects. Let me ask you first, though, should government be in the entertainment business? Should government build ballparks, stadiums, arenas? Is that the role of a local government?
Well, I think you have to look around the country, and the answer to that question is government does that. I mean, if you go to Dallas, you can go to Dallas. Government, Arlington, the city of Arlington, the county, are highly invested into Cowboy or AT&T Stadium, highly invested into Globe Life Field, the Texas Rangers play in. I mean, American Airlines Stadium downtown where the Mavericks play. You go around the state of Texas and you just figure on these type of arenas, and of course now the out of the box one that you and I have talked about, and I point to as one of the examples is what the University of Texas did with the Moody Center in Austin. The University of Texas paid $0 for that stadium. The private sector paid for it.
Right. My understanding is that they actually went to city council for some kind of subsidy and were told flat out no.
Yeah.
And then it was totally paid for with private funds.
Well, it's a private sector developer,
right.
And the Moody Foundation and family, they bought the naming rights. So they've got the name for so many years, but it's a 35-year lease. UT gets it for 65 days a year. 65. So the other 300 days belongs to the developer to bring in concerts and rodeos and ice skating and whatever it may be.
Ted, I'm all for that.
I am too, but we haven't looked at that. We have not looked at that.
Well, why don't some of the large stakeholders come together and build something privately?
Well, I think we should. But it's not going to be anyone here locally that will build it. It will be a seasoned developer. And the people that will watch this and is go on oakview.com, and Oakview developed the Moody Center, as well as hundreds, probably 100 other facilities across the country, ranging from arenas to music to venues, but it's all public-private partnership. There's public money with private money in those developments. I think in this case, if you want to build the right thing, you got $160 million on the table. You convince the county as a partner. You convince UTEP as a partner, as the three-legged stool with a private sector developer.
Okay, let's now move to the arena. That's something I know something about. And let's see where you and I stand on that issue. So 2012 Quality Life Bond was $473.25 million. And in Proposition B, one of the signature projects was a multi-purpose performing arts and entertainment facility. And I think you and I both know that the project was not handled particularly well, neither by the Wilson administration nor by the Gonzalez administration. Of course, as you know, I litigated for a number of reasons and prevailed. So the idea is that the facility must be built on budget, can't spend more than $180 million, and it can't be built at that one particular site, the Union Plaza neighborhood. So the bond ordinance specifies downtown, and so it must be downtown.
Yeah.
So when Wilson writes op-eds and says we could partner with Don Haskins, no, you can't. You can't use public money over there.
I think what you have to look at is partnering with UTEP. I think, and one of the things, it's just like the Moody Center in UT. UT basically gets it 65 days a year. The thing here would be, do you get UTEP to come down and in a world-class facility? And and either play
Or
ball.
to partner at a downtown location is what you're
Downtown
saying.
location.
That's different.
Yeah.
Wilson's advocating
Well,
for getting involved in the Haskins Center. We can't do that with
No,
public money.
I don't think you get involved with the Haskins Center. That's their deal up at Utah, but there's a way, and you can bring them or have certain games downtown, to promote the facility. But the developer, whoever that developer is, Oakview's just one in the country. There's several developers that do this. Would entice UTEP, would make it worth their while to play downtown. There's always, some monetary advantage to doing certain things like that. But those are the things. But I think if you're going to do this, Max, you're going to have all three, plus the private sector. So 3 publics and 1 private. That is the facilitator.
Okay.
That is the one that's going to go out to the markets and say, we think El Paso is worth X in dollars, in revenue, to bring in concerts, to bring in basketball, to have whatever it may be in that facility.
So we got $162 million on the table left in the bond money, plus the proceeds from the future sale of the Duranguito properties, which will be at least $15 million. So you're going to be close to $180 million that's still on the table. And of course, in order to spend that on an NPC, it has to be within the confines of downtown. And in order to avoid problems, litigation, you have to find a site large enough. If you're going to go 15,000 seats, like some of the developers want, you can build it at the convention center.
I've only heard of one developer. I haven't, and that's because we told them 15,000, or we could afford 15. The Moody Center's 15 in Austin.
Right.
How big is Austin? How big is that market?
It's a much bigger market.
Bingo. So my point is, you're going to size something to this market. It's not going to be 18,000. It's going to be something that's sized to this market because they got to make money.
Well,
That's the private sector initiative. Is they got to make money on this thing and not have an empty 18,000 when it only need 10 or 12 or 11, whatever that number is. I don't know what it is.
Now the city, in all of its messaging, and the big developers have frequently cited figures between 14 and 18,000 seats. Let's just say that
18? No one's building 18.
It's big, right?
No one's building 18.
But let's just say that it's a much larger facility than the one that's currently being planned, is what some people want. So in order to achieve that, really you could build it at the convention center. You could build it there, obliterate everything and start again. Maybe incorporate the Chavez Theater, put 50 or 60 million into that. Or the rail yard on the east side
Right here.
of Campbell.
Yeah, right behind my office.
Yeah. The rail yard just behind City Hall is a huge space with easy access from the freeway. It's closer to the airport. It's abutting downtown. It's an eyesore. It would require a major abatement and it would require a lot of prolonged negotiations with the railroad.
Yeah, and again, the abatement issues, if you're going to encapsulate it, you have different abatement for commercial than you do residential. So it's a different story. But the point is, the location will have to be determined, but I think you got to get the players to the table to say, what do we want?
Okay. It has been 19 years since Joyce Wilson was really pushing for this when she began 2004, 2005 to really get the project going, leading up to the 2012 bond election and then everything that happened since. And in these 19 years, nobody from the private sector stood up and said, I'll throw in $100 million, I'll throw in $250 million.
We haven't engaged them.
Why is that?
Well, I don't know. Ask the city why they haven't engaged
But
them.
the Paso del Norte group promoted the project in the first place. They're all there. None of them stepped up to the plate and said, we'll give you money.
But they won't. They're not the developer. They don't have the expertise. When I say Oakview, that's what they do for a living. The people you're talking about don't do it for a living. They're not in that business. So you got to look to the private developers that are, there's several of them out there, but if you go on Oakview and look at what they've done, you're going to say, it's an aha moment. You're going to say, aha.
So it's a matter of reaching out to them, strategically. Bring in the investors.
You bring in the investors.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about this. So the ballpark, which I also know something about, requires a $4.2 million a year subsidy from the hotel occupancy tax, which is one of the 10 highest hot taxes in America. We're at 17.5%. That in itself, as far as I'm concerned, is an anti-competitive practice, having a hot that's high, but that's another matter. The bottom line is that it requires a $4.2 million subsidy to stay afloat. Without that, it would be insolvent on the city side of the contract. We're sure that Mountain Star is doing great. They don't share their figures, they're not required to, but on our side of the contract...
well, if it's funded by the hot tax, who cares?
Well, that could be...
The hot tax is out-of-town people.
It's money that
the visitor is paying for that.
It's money that could be used for a more productive purpose than a sports event.
Like what?
Like historic preservation projects to generate heritage tourism, for example, which is what it's intended for. It's intended for projects.
Well, that's your bailiwick. That's what you like.
Well, you're on the Texas Historical.
I know, but that's what you like. That's what you like. I'm learning a lot about history in Texas and historicals. Yeah, I'm learning a whole bunch.
You're in my camp here. You're on the THC. I'm on the TSHA and Preservation Texas.
Yeah.
We're on the same team.
Yeah.
Heritage tourism, one of the fastest growing sectors of the Texas economy.
Right.
And if you want to benefit local hotels, you have to invest in that as well.
I agree. No, I don't disagree.
Okay. We're not in disagreement. So the bottom line is that the ballpark has a hot tax subsidy.
Mm-hmm. Wait a minute. We got a lot of others that have subsidy. That World War II era building.
The Coliseum has a subsidy as well.
They
Smaller, but they've got
a subsidy.
They
got a subsidy.
Yep.
And that subsidy was given to the county by Jonathan Rogers.
Yes, it was.
Which was, in my opinion, a horrible mistake.
Well, before the ballpark, our hotel occupancy tax was 15.5%. It was a little more reasonable. My only point is this. The MPC, whatever we build, will have no hot tax. Okay? Will have no hot tax. Now, it's one thing...
Well, it may have a county hot tax if you get the county involved.
They won't do it.
We don't know.
Dead in the water. They're not going to give you 1 penny of their hot tax.
Well, if the county Coliseum's no longer there, maybe they will.
Dead in the water. You don't have a county that's going to do that. Let's just assume a worst case scenario.
Well, regardless, the key to the county is, the key to anything that I think is worthwhile, that supports the tourism in El Paso, and that means it is a piece of the Civic Center, part of the Civic Center, then I'm all for it. I'm all for the three-legged stool and that private sector developer figuring out what do we need.
If we build a $500 million structure, public-private,
it won't be $500 million.
To build 15,000 seats is $489 million.
My friend, we just talked. We're not Austin. Austin, the Moody Center is 15,000.
You're in favor of more like 10,000.
I don't believe 15 is the size.
Okay.
And that's just looked at. I'm looking at other communities and what they have done.
Let me put it to you this way. Even if the city were to proceed at the Union Depot site and build something for $180 million, let's just say.
You mean an amphitheater?
An amphitheater.
We got one.
We would have to plug probably a $10 million a year hole in our budget without hot tax. What kind of business plan could possibly make up that shortfall? Is there financial risk in building something that large in terms of maintenance?
No, because you transfer it's off the balance sheet. Moody Center is completely borne expenses are off the balance sheet borne by the private sector developer.
If they're amenable. The ballpark was structured differently.
No, but we're talking about a like facility. UT does not have any liability there operationally.
Where would you like to see it built, ideally?
Just off the top of my head, I think you take out that where the buses are and go down Santa Fe Street between the laundry, the old, it was a restaurant, La Norteña. Right. Used to be La Norteña.
Right, the Chinese laundry building.
Strip right down there and take out the parking garage and the bus across the street from the Civic Center.
So you say across the street from the Civic Center. Why not at the Civic Center? Why not replace the Civic Center?
You could, but yeah, you could. You could do that.
And what about the rail yard behind City Hall?
That works too.
Okay, so we don't.
But it doesn't abut your Civic Center. I think you need it to be a part of the complex, or take over the complex completely. I think it's got to be abutted to it to complement the Civic Center.
Okay. So you're in favor of moving it to a place that doesn't anger anybody.
But that wouldn't. That strip of land right through there. That's a block. That's a city block. You take the street out. You put it right next to the Civic Center. Now I'm an architect. I'm acting as an engineer and an architect and a planner right now.
Right.
Which I'm not experienced at.
Yeah. By the way, I'll tell you, it's fairly public. In the course of my litigation, my attorney met with D. Margo together with J.P. Bryan and tried to move the project exactly there, between San Antonio Avenue and the Civic Center, and we essentially agreed. And then Dee and the city just walked away without explanation. The talks halted, and the litigation went on for another 5 years. I've got no problem with building something on an empty lot or replacing dilapidated buildings that have no historical value. That's not a problem.
Well, there's no historical. It's the old, or is it still the? I can't remember the name of it. It was a restaurant supply. It was Restaurant Supply House. They sold it. They moved out, and then you got the city building where old number 1 is housed. Their engine number 1.
Right. Okay.
You go down that. You go down that block. You go right. Take the street out. And you're right up next to the Civic Center.
Bottom line is, Ted, that
that seems like a pretty good.
You and I don't have a disagreement here.
Mm-mm.
You want to take the $180 million in public bond money, move it to a site that doesn't destroy anything important, add $300 or $400 million of private money, and build it however large you want to build it, whether it's $200 million, $300 million, $400 million private money. I got no problem with that. I don't think anybody will have a problem with that. So that's fine. But let me ask you another question. You have consistently been in favor of raising large funds through bonds and other means, whether through TRZs or through vehicle registration fees, in order to build more infrastructure. And with a declining population and a central El Paso that is gradually being sapped of its population and vitality, with schools closing and so on, people moving into the periphery, what is the point of that? Why invest in all this infrastructure if our city is not growing?
Did you notice?
Did you
notice the traffic the last week on I-10 and all the trucks? Have you seen it? You notice and there was just a line of trucks in the center lane, a line of trucks, as far as you can see. You know, they stack up here in the morning, coming from the west to the east.
Right. You want to widen the freeway.
No, it's one lane each direction, downtown in the trench. But you're not moving the trench. The trench stays the same.
Couldn't we simply leave the trench and add another lane in each direction?
That's what we're doing.
There's space there.
We're going to do that.
Without widening
Well,
the
that's
trench.
what we're doing. We're not widening the trench.
Rebuild the bridges, leave the trench.
Next time you go through the trench, notice how the trench is. It's like this, down. They're going to go like this. They're going to take out the slopes.
Right.
Put one lane in each direction.
Now, you're in favor of a deck plaza.
Oh, yeah, big time.
A deck plaza, just so our
game
viewers
changer.
understand, is to build a huge platform over I-10, so you don't have that open gouge in the middle of downtown. You have a platform, and that can be for parks and facilities.
Been to Dallas and seen Clyde Warren Park?
Yes, and it's interesting.
Number 2 tourist attraction in the city.
So it's all well and good as long as there's money for it. The fear is, and it's my fear as well, that the taxpayers of El Paso will be on the hook for 9 figures. We'll be in the hundreds of millions helping to pay for that thing.
No.
Do you think that can be avoided?
Yeah, because we're going after federal dollars.
You think it's possible?
Yes, we've been working on that diligently and identifying that, but we got to get to the environmental.
Because the state's not going to give us anything for a deck plaza.
That's not necessarily true.
That's what we're hearing.
Well, you may hear that, but that's not. They are mandated, they say the state's mandated to build 3 deck parks in Houston. They're going to take I-45 below grade and build, and they're mandated by the Federal Highway Administration to build all 3, they being textile.
Is there a plan to build a sports facility such as a soccer stadium atop the deck plaza?
No.
That's off the table. What do you envision on top of the deck plaza?
Well, if you've been to Clyde Warren, akin to Clyde Warren, it'd be open area, it'd be dog park, it'd be a walking area, it would be small little soccer stadium for the little kiddies, and more like a backyard park. I mean, you'd have maybe some structure there for a little restaurant or that sort of
something like 6 blocks long. Did I get that right? About 6 blocks?
Well, the plan is going from Santa Fe Street down to Kansas Street.
Santa Fe to Kansas. Okay.
Yeah.
How much would that cost?
About 300 million.
That's it? Really?
Mm-hmm.
I thought it would be at least $500 million.
About 350.
Okay. And you think it could be paid for with federal money?
Yeah.
Entirely?
We hope so.
Well, I wouldn't object to that.
I wouldn't either. Well, we go back. I'll go back and talk to you. You were probably keenly involved with what happened at UMC when they came out with 400 million.
Yeah, they tried to ram through a $400 million CO.
Yeah. And
Part
part of that was Cancer Center.
Right.
Okay. And I got chided for my view that we need to go get appropriated dollars for the Cancer Center. An appropriation for a cancer center through Texas Tech.
Yeah.
And we did. We got 65 million, there's 35, that was passed. 35 million is in supplemental for next session. Steve Fox and his wife Nancy gave 25 million, so soon you'll see a cancer center coming out of the ground at Texas Tech.
Well,
so when I talk, my point is, those are the things we need to have our legislators be on focus, on point, to say these are the gaps we need to fill in. If there is a gap in federal dollars with a deck park, we need to get appropriations for that sort of thing through TxDOT, through Federal Highway, through DOT. Those types of things are appropriators, which are our legislators in Austin during session, and that's what we're working on.
So let's use that as a springboard for the next topic. I want to talk for a moment about debt instruments. Very sexy topic, debt instruments. So our city owes $852 million in certificate of obligation debt. That's non-voter approved debt, principal and interest, $852 million. That is almost as much as the 5 largest Texas cities combined. By comparison, just Dallas and Houston together, those 2 cities owe $50 million in COs. Here in El Paso, we have issued about $500 million of that just since Tommy Gonzalez assumed office in 2014. As a conservative, I'm a libertarian. There's nothing I object to more. When there's a large debt issuance, I want to vote on it. And I'm mature enough to do it. I can make decisions about that. I can go to the ballot box and vote for a general obligation bond. I hate COs. I just hate them. Where do you stand on COs? Is that an instrument that we should be using?
Right place, at the right time, right project.
For example?
It could be a backfill on a project that needs to get it over the goal line.
Why not go to the voters?
Well,
can they be trusted?
Let's say you've gone to the voters and the voters have approved it, but it's going to go over budget. Either you cut the damn gum thing back, or you don't build it, or you do, or you say we're going to go forward if it's a gap filler, things like that. Or if you are going to draw down federal dollars and you need the match, I believe COs are appropriate in that respect, and we've been doing that. We have done that. For instance, the Zaragoza grade separation, the Union Pacific Railroad, double track in the lower valley is a horrendous intersection. 45 trains a day go through there. Stop traffic off of the bridge coming up Zaragoza. It's a $22 million project. We go for, and it grades out when he's talking about a cost-benefit analysis with USDOT. It has a formula. We meet the formula beyond, because it's a huge air quality issue and congestion issue. We would be required to match 20%.
Okay.
So $4.4 million.
So you're in favor of using COs for critical infrastructure?
Oh yeah.
Critical transportation
Absolutely.
infrastructure. Now,
and that's a gap filler.
Now on the quality of life bond, $473.25 million, organized into 2 propositions that appeared on the November 6, 2012 ballot. There's the price tag. I'm a voter, I look at the ballot, I read $473.25 million. And then, under Tommy Gonzalez and D. Margo, $64 million in COs were issued in order to increase that price tag. for the Children's Museum, for the Mexican American Cultural Center, and other projects, the East Side Regional Sports Complex. I find that very objectionable and anti-democratic.
So what would you have done with that? What would you have done? Kill the project?
I would have stayed within budget and made difficult decisions.
Yeah, difficult?
Yeah. You can eliminate some of the smaller projects. You can go for another GO bond. You can use general fund money.
Yeah.
But you do not issue a CO to supplement a bond project that came with a price tag on a ballot.
Well, I call that backfill.
Okay.
Okay, so the backfill, and I don't remember the cost of the MAC, Mexican American Cultural Center.
It was a little over $5 million, and now it's 16.
Yeah, it was never going to be built for $5 million.
Well,
you and I both know it.
They should have been honest
And
about
the
that.
Children's Museum, now the Children's Museum's got a boatload of private money in it.
It's got $20 million.
Yeah.
It was a $19.5 million project. The El Paso Community Foundation came in with 20 on the condition that the city would throw in another 20. So the city more than doubled its commitment in order to match that grant. And so now it's a $60 million project, which is great. But I'm not one of these people, Ted, who believes the ends justify the means. I don't like using COs to fund costs.
No, I get it. Maybe, and philosophically, we separate. If it's backfill money like that, then you do it. I can't imagine what a $5 million MAC would look like. I don't think we would like it. I don't think the local Hispanic community would like it either. I mean, I really don't. I mean, there was one time you wanted to tear down Chavez or $30 million wrapper around Chavez and make it into a MAC. But,
well, then Joyce Wilson and Tommy Gonzalez and our city leadership should have come up with a better plan.
Yeah.
More credible.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda. But on the front end of these sort of things,
yeah.
I think it's a real leadership issue. I really do. I believe it. I think the city, I mean the mayor and the council they've got to show that the vision, more of a vision
right.
of what we want out of these sort of things and what we're willing to pay, and go back to the public and say, hey, we got a problem here, Houston, El Paso. We got to backfill these projects, and then be honest about the issues.
Let's talk.
Not that they're dishonest. It's just that you got to go out and tell the people what's going on.
You just said something that triggered me. What we're willing to pay. I like that phrase. So let's talk about the next topic, which is the vehicle registration fee. Our state delegation, consisting of a state senator and 3 Texas House representatives, tried to support House Bill 78, which would have allowed the county to raise our vehicle registration fee by $10. Yes, it would be put to a vote, but it gave the county the authority to do that. It was shot down by the Republicans in Austin. Now, if that had gone through, we potentially could have had the highest vehicle registration fee of the 254 counties of the state of Texas, in the poorest city in Texas, right, with the lowest average wage and the lowest average household income.
You sure it's the highest? It would have been the highest?
Yes.
Because I looked at that chart when we did the exact same thing when I was on the commission.
I've got the figures. I'll share them with you afterwards.
Yeah, share them with me. But I don't remember us being that high on the chart. But go ahead.
It puts us in a number one. If all $10 are tacked on to what we have, we're number one. But you told the El Paso Times that you were in favor of that because of the benefit. Because that $10 could then be bonded to the tune of hundreds of millions for infrastructure projects. And I come back to...
Remember that federal money we got to fill in the gap with?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff?
But Ted, aren't you concerned about having the highest vehicle registration fee in Texas? Isn't that something that
we got one of the lowest in the country as a state. So when you index us to other parts of the country, our registration fees are pittance compared to what they're paying in other parts of this country.
Highest property tax, highest vehicle registration
property
fee.
Tax or tax rate?
Highest hotel occupancy tax rate.
No, tax rate or property tax?
Tax rate.
Tax rate.
Yes.
Because our valuations are low. Our valuations are horribly low.
Our valuations are low because our property tax rate is high.
Exactly.
Okay.
We got to have a high tax rate to get the money to run this city.
So my number one investment in my life, which is my home for
Right.
my family, appreciates very slowly compared to other Texas cities, just generally over the long term, because my taxes keep going up.
That's when we need more industry.
It suppresses the value of my primary asset.
You know, all those big warehouses they're building out there are going to have a profound effect on this community, because now you're building things with got goods in them that they get taxed, and that's what we need to be doing. But not only that, but we need to do what Shaduri is doing to bring industry here. What a group did to bring Texas Tech Health Science Center Medical School to El Paso, which has about 2,500 people on campus down there, high-paying jobs.
Okay, now I'm coming to my big question. I've been working my way up to this.
Oh, this is going to be a big one.
So, the census. Between 2010 and 2020, the population of Texas grew at an incredible rate. Something like 15% in only 10 years. Kaboom, right? Number one economy in the United States, Texas. El Paso, in the same period, grew under 5%. And since 2017...
El Paso, Texas, city limits or county?
El Paso City, Texas. The county grew a little bit more.
I think they were at 8%, weren't they?
Well, you know what?
I think they're at 8%.
I'm going to focus on the city of El Paso rate because I've got that memorized, 4.5.
Okay, go ahead.
The city of El Paso, which is most of our county population, has seen a declining population since 2017. We've lost net 6,000 people. We've gone from 683 in 2017 to 678. These are federal figures to the American Community Survey. There's a yearly analysis that is empirical. So the county has grown very slightly in population. It's very anemic, less than 1%. The city has declined by 6,000 people, about 1%, since 2017. Why is that happening, Ted?
Birth rate, I think, is number one. Kids aren't having kids. Our kids aren't having the kids. When, like my family, my parents had 6 kids. I had 5 kids.
You don't think it's taxation?
No, no. I think we have a coalition meeting on every other Wednesday, and I had Walter Miller, and I said, Walter, how's the population out there? And they're talking. He's got 2 population bases. He's got Horizon. He's got the Paseos. That's the big development out there that Hunt has done. And he says it is off the charts in the Paseos, in that master plan community out there. And I said, who's moving there? He says, well, it's the next generation, and they're all middle class. They're middle class people. The next generation that has lived inside the city limits, that live with their parents, live down the street, live in an apartment. He says they're federal, they're state employees. There's a lot, just a mismatch of a lot of people. But he said, we have a great middle class out here in this region. But he says they're coming from here. They're coming from El Paso.
That's right. They're leaving the older established core.
They are.
For new areas with beautiful streets.
With all the amenities.
With all the amenities.
The water parks you don't like.
It's a zero-sum game. It's a zero-sum game. And the families that are leaving, El Paso Matters did an analysis. The average household income is about $55,000. So middle-class families are leaving. And the primary destination is New Mexico. And I can tell you that my own mother, who came to retire in El Paso some years ago, left 2 years ago, when she saw the incremental increases and calculated that with all these future bond issuances, it was just going to get worse. She's a retiree. She went back to New Mexico, where her taxes are $1,200 a year for a 3,000 square foot house. And
well, I think that may be the retired folks.
I got about 2 dozen neighbors in the west side around me who all moved to New Mexico. Many of them still work in Texas. It used to be that going to New Mexico was a wash because they have an income tax in New Mexico. We're now at such a point of imbalance that it is a major draw. You have developers who specialize in luring our taxpayers across the border into New Mexico.
Yeah,
and it is
use our infrastructure and use our amenities. Go to the ballpark. Go to the civic center. They go to wherever they use our shopping. Yeah, exactly. Got it.
Yeah, in Santa Teresa, they don't even have a professional fire department.
Nope.
Right?
Volunteer.
But people are moving there into new houses to evade our property tax.
Well, I think some are doing that. I don't think it's the sole.
It's significant.
There's a number. I'm not, but I when I talked to Walter about what the dynamics playing out in that region, and even down the valley in Socorro, and the developments that are showing up on planned neighborhoods down there. When you look at El Paso County, our population has grown. In the city, you're right. We're on the other side of this deal.
Right.
We are on the other side of this deal.
And of course, you and I both want what's best for our community.
Yeah.
And I think in the course of this discussion, I think we're realizing we're not that far apart on a lot of things. I think our main difference is, you're optimistic about bonding more projects.
I'm optimistic,
and I'm afraid.
I'm optimistic about having the right players. And I said this at the UMC deal and got waylaid for it. Is you can't load everything. If you go back and look at the El Paso Inc. on the property taxpayer, you can't. We can't load that. We've got to think outside the box. We didn't think outside the box. We got a cancer center out of it that's currently got over $100 million in it. It's going to have more into it after the next session. We've got to use the legislators that we send down there to say, these are our priorities, and we need to backfill, and whatever we're going to backfill or get appropriations for the projects we need to have out here. And that's leadership. That's nothing more than this city council telling those elected officials, here's our priorities, and this is the big ticket stuff.
And you're a bipartisan guy. I mean, I've seen in the papers that you've supported Rick Perry. I've seen in the papers that you've supported Beto O'Rourke. You're willing to support any elected leaders who will take us forward, regardless of party.
Yeah. I don't look at the R&D
right
at all. I support whether like Veronica Escobar. I think she's bringing more money back to our community than any other congressman, probably from the standpoint, cumulatively has brought back more money over the last 30, 40 years.
Right.
I mean, and I'm seeing it because we're involved in it. We see what the grants are coming and what grants are being applied for, what grants we're receiving. Now, we're starting to get bigger and bigger grants too. So
she's kind of an anomaly. It's an El Paso kind of thing when you have people like Beto and Escobar who are very progressive on things like guns, immigration, abortion, but have a great deal of Republican support because of their economic priorities. It's really an interesting phenomenon that we have going on.
It is, yeah. And like I said, I think she's done more than any other congressman, and cumulatively in the last 30 to 40 years. Now, she understands what we need out here, and it's capital. And we've always kind of had our hands out like this to be, but we've really never demanded it, and not only demanded, but show why we need it.
So you feel, Ted, that with more infrastructure investment, more amenities, that people will want to stay here because their quality of life is going to improve.
Well,
whereas I feel that.
Well, I want to tell you, I think that the other part of that's education. It's not just the other part. But I think it's a third of the U.S. population has a college degree. A third. Means 2/3. But we also have to teach these kids the trades. People don't want to go, I was listening to Warren Buffett, and he's saying if you're not involved in science, medical, law, and again, engineering, why do you need a degree? I mean, I gave one or two more. And you're hearing that theme now running through that if you don't have a degree, you're looked at lesser than. And that's not true. I mean, I talked to Stanley Joe about his drivers making 6 figures as delivering concrete.
Oh no, I'm with you on that, Ted. I'm a university professor, I'm an academic, and I'll be the first to say that university is not for everybody, and it doesn't always make economic sense.
But I go back to my education piece. It's just not higher, and it's just not, K through 12. We got to get these kids through the system, but then give them some type of trade that we can market to industry to bring them in. So the amenities deal, it's like a chicken and egg. You build the amenities first, and if you build it, they will come, type of deal. But we've got to have things that people want to go do, and they've got extracurricular activities they can participate in that we offer here in the community that we're in competition with.
Right. Now here's how I see it, Ted, coming toward the end of our discussion. I have to come up with 3% of the value of my home every year. Yet my community needs more things. Okay. The city was 25% of our property tax in 2014 when Tommy assumed office. Now it's between 29 and 30%. The county wants to bond $500 million, which would bring them right up to the edge of how much they can bond without digging.
See, I think, again, I go back to, and I'm interrupting you, I know, but they say, oh, we got $500 million, we got to go spend it. What is it that we need in this community that will drive the train, that will drive that economic engine?
The bottom line is that the city and the county are almost bonded out. They're right at the edge of what's possible without digging our bond rating and risking our credit as a municipality and as a county. It's dangerous. The school districts, especially EPISD, financially are out of control. If you look at their balance sheets, how much their employees are paid, how bloated they are, their inability to adapt, right, as institutions. And so, I think that in order to be truly competitive, for me to pay a level of property tax that's comfortable and not to be fearful of paying more, and for businesses to have an atmosphere in which they can function with predictable tax rates, we need to be at around 2.7, 2.8, not 3.0, to get back into kilter. And that means that we can't bond as much as we want. We have to retire some of those bonds, and we have to bring the 5 taxing entities together and like adults really agree on who gets what and what makes sense for our community. These 5 taxing entities don't talk to each other.
No.
They try and get as much as they can individually.
Yeah.
Right? The city's pulling back, the county's moving in. Right? When there's a little bit more whipped cream in the pie, then the school districts will pounce on that and try and get $500 million. And this is no way for us to operate financially. What level of taxation is appropriate, Ted? I mean, how much should I pay as a percentage of the value of my home every year? At 3.0%, is that enough? Or should I be willing to pay?
Now, your value of your home is not static.
I'm not talking about, well, let's just say.
What value are you placing on your home?
Okay, let's talk practically then. It's not the tax rate, it is the amount that I'm paying.
The dollar.
I gotta pay $9,000 a year. Should I be prepared to pay 11? At what point do I pack up and leave? You see what I'm saying?
Well, it's your tolerance level. What are you going to tolerate?
Right. Now you and I are gainfully employed, but a lot of people in El Paso aren't.
No.
A poverty rate of 30 or 40%. In the segundo barrio, the average household income is $11,500, $12,000, and property taxes drive up rents for people who are truly poor. And it's getting to a point where homelessness is on the rise. There are a lot of retired people living in insecurity, worrying about their property tax burden. We bond these projects. We fix that intersection with the train that you were talking about. We build the deck park. We build a bigger arena. We do all these things, but obviously the tide rises, bringing up all the boats in terms of how much we have to pay in taxes to sustain all of that. Are you worried about this at all?
What I'm worried about is burying our head in the sand and, the city's edict that they won't issue any more new debt, COs, or dollars out of the budget. So we're going this way. So this is what happened several years ago, and I say several, I'm not going to identify the administrations, but the point is, that happened.
The city turned off the faucet. City turned off the faucet.
Turned off the faucet, and then guess what? Things go down. We don't have anything going on here to attract and retain people, industry or otherwise. And we're headed that direction with the attitude. I get what you're talking about. I get what they're talking about.
You understand my concern as a
I get it. But doing that is the wrong thing to do. I've seen this picture before.
Is there a happy medium?
Yeah, sure there is.
Is there a place in the middle?
But again, it takes somebody to articulate the vision of what we need to be doing. And have you heard anyone that can articulate a vision for this community? Elected. And I don't want to have you indict anybody, or I don't, but articulate a vision that people will say, yeah, this is the things we need to be doing to grow the pie in this community, to bring my wife teaches accounting at UTEP. She's an accounting teacher. And she sees KPMG, Pricewaterhouse, Deloitte come in here and pluck out all of her graduates.
All our best and brightest.
Gone.
Right.
Plucks them out. And she's glad to do it for these kids because they get to help themselves to another level, grow themselves, see how the things go. Hopefully someday these kids will come back. But most of, and now a few of them work for the FBI as accountants, as forensic accountants. Some work for the Justice Department as forensic accountants. I mean, and she's got a wide range of alumni, but she says they come in and they offer these kids, and there they go. There they go.
Right. Yeah.
So how do you stop that?
Well, some would say...
And it's not taxes, it's opportunity. So what is how do we build the opportunity for these kids?
As a libertarian, my answer would be, you lower the tax burden and the regulation and the fees to the point that businesses want to establish themselves.
But we got to provide some of the other things. When you transfer those maquila managers that live in your neighborhood and go across the bridge every day to manage, we've got to offer those folks that they want to stay around and some amenities that they like to go to concerts at the Haskins Center or go to a rodeo or an ice show.
The only way we can get Meta here and Whole Foods and all these companies is to draft these 380 and 381 agreements and give away property tax revenue and provide them with abatements. So they want to stay here X number of years.
Well, let me tell you, the only person to do the 380 was the city and the county. The school district didn't do a 380. No way. They're going to make off like bandits.
Nobody is at the helm of that ship. Okay, the school districts do whatever they want, and we have very little control.
No, they're no 380.
They can spend what they want.
No,
they can do what they want.
Well, I think what we need to hold, especially El Paso at this point in time. I drive by shuttered schools on many occasions during the day, and it kind of upsets you that they haven't moved these off their balance sheet and sold them to someone, to get the money. And now they did sell one to the city at below market rate. Yeah. Look, that was a crime.
Ted, just look at the boards of trustees of our 9 school districts. How much financial acumen are on those boards?
Well, I think, when 300 people elect a board of a trustee, kind of tells a story.
Enough said. Yeah, no, we agree. Final word, Texas Historical Commission. You've been appointed by Governor Abbott to the Texas Historical Commission in Austin. Very important board, especially for me, that oversees policies.
You want us to make your house a historical site or something? What do you want?
My house was built in '82. I mean, my house is.
We can put a monument out in front of your house.
Put a statue of somebody. Why do you want to serve on the THC?
I didn't have any designs to serve. Didn't ask to serve. They called me. Like Governor Perry did, I didn't ask to serve on the Transportation Commission, or the General Land Office. They called me. I said, well, I'll go see what this is all about. And it is interesting. It is quite interesting.
You hired a new executive director to replace
new guy. Yeah, new guy. He's getting his feet wet.
Okay.
Now I know. I don't know if we got any more time, but the point is, the city council on a Thursday, somebody, and I know who it was, the city council member puts on the last hour an overlay for downtown, a new historic overlay. Thursday, voted on Tuesday, no public input.
That's often how things happen in the city.
No, it's been happening on a regular basis.
The arena project was announced on October 13th, 2016, and 5 days later they voted themselves eminent domain authority and moved forward with it. 5 days.
Yeah. So to my point, my point here is, they, historical commission, the staff says, what about this? And I said, there was no hearing. The landowners, which I am one of, right here in this
Are you
building.
talking about downtown?
Yeah, downtown.
Okay. This is an important project, and it's on your plate.
It's on my plate, but here's the point. None of us know about it. None of us know the good, the bad, the ugly of this deal. No one's talked about it to the landowners.
I don't know if that's true. There's been ongoing outreach for years on this project.
No, the new one that Representative Canales introduced about a couple of months ago.
You're talking about a National Register Historic District.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a project I've been working on forever, and the county ran a survey in 2017 to lay the groundwork. They nominated the Segundo Barrio, which became a National Register Historic District in 2021, and downtown's been stalled for political reasons in Austin. But the thing is this, I don't need to tell you, but I'll tell our viewers that a National Register Historic District, unlike a local district, comes with zero regulations. You can demolish the building that's on the National Register.
First I've heard of it.
You can paint it purple.
First I've heard of it.
But what it does come with, Ted, are tax credits, federal and state, that will pay for up to 45% of the cost of renovating the building, which is why Paul Foster got the Crest building and the Houghton on the National Register before he renovated them, because he's getting millions back in tax credits from the feds and state. Stuart Myers got over $10 million for
They're Del Norte. I get it.
Lane Gaddy, Bassett Tower.
I get it.
So this district would add 191 buildings to the register.
There has not been any kind of formal meetings with the landowners to say, here's this big picture, and here's what we can do for you, and here's the if you take the federal money, here's what you have to go through to get the federal money. Never heard of anything.
Yeah, it's a major stimulus. I think I told you last time we met, I put together a group to restore Sacred Heart Church in the Segundo Barrio.
Yeah.
We've got $650,000 of that paid for because it's on the National Register. It's amazing, right? You give that to 191 buildings in downtown, including the buildings in the arena footprint. And
You got to have investors too. Now the investors,
We got investors.
They got to come up with the money.
We got investors, but in the case of the arena footprint, which is now going to be for sale again, the city's going to unload those properties in the private sector, which I'm in favor of. Private investors are going to step in, buy those properties. Probably there will be restrictive covenants on the sales agreements.
Sure there will.
And whoever buys them will have to restore them. But without putting them on the National Register first, no one's going to want to buy them. You need that 45% discount to make it economically attractive. And that is why Paul Foster, Stuart Myers, Lane Gaddy put their buildings on the National Register before they restored them. So it's a no-brainer. Every other city in Texas, except for El Paso, has a National Register district at its core. Dallas just doubled the size of its National Register district. It's not exactly the bluest city in the state, right? It makes economic sense.
Well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that.
Offline.
Look, Ted, on behalf of my group, the El Paso Taxpayer Revolt, I want to thank you for this very interesting and productive conversation. I've learned a lot, and I know that you have the best interests of El Paso at heart. We may disagree on a thing or two, but I think we agree more than we disagree, and it's been an interesting and illuminating discussion. Thank you.
Well, we'll have some fun going forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.